Right now, Pittsburgh's best sports show is about to begin. Call us or tweet us. We've got things to talk about on the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call.
All right, thanks a lot for sticking around for the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. It's a sad hockey night in Pittsburgh. Legendary broadcaster Mike Lange passed away at 76 today. He was battling health conditions for the last few years. He retired before the start of the 2021 season, and today passed away at the age of 76. Lange is obviously best known for some of his catchphrases. I know one of mine is "Get in the fast lane, Grandma. The bingo game is ready to roll. Buy Sam a drink and get his dog one too." We can keep going about this. It's a hockey night in Pittsburgh. He would start games with, and if the Penguins won, he would end it with, Elvis has just left the building. Mike Lange, the legendary broadcaster for the Penguins, spent 46 years with the Penguins, 50 years of broadcasting, one of the best to ever do it. Passed away at the age of 76. Chris Mueller is joining me here tonight from the 93.7 The Fan Cam. I had a chance to work with Mike Lange for a few years when I did the scoreboard, intermissions updates for a few years with the Penguins. I also obviously spent a lot of time with him over those years covering. I had a chance to cover 4 Stanley Cup runs. They lost that first one in 08, but 3 wins in 09 and then in 16 and 17. He was a really good guy, would go out of his way to say hi. Just a good guy, a legendary broadcaster, and he's obviously famously known for those legendary sayings after goals.
Yeah, I mean, I obviously would express my condolences to everyone who was close to Mike, which is pretty much everyone who's watching this, because you kind of felt like you were close to the guy because he became one of us, being a native of Sacramento and then spending so much time here, like you said, as the voice of the Penguins, as a guy who transcended. I think the one thing is usually, okay, broadcasters are popular, but the athletes are always more popular than the coaches. He was every bit as popular as the players on those teams, especially in the earlier days when the franchise was struggling to find its footing, Richie. And I only had a couple chances to meet with and chat with Mike, but incredibly gracious, total gentleman, a great storyteller, as you might imagine. And I would say as a broadcaster, a giant of the profession, not just here, but I think people really the country over knew of him. He's the guy in Pittsburgh who has the very funny sayings, and I think here he was the definition of a legend. We throw that word around a lot for people, but he really was a legend. I can still remember being in a bar in Chicago watching Game 7 in 2009 with a buddy of mine. I was out there visiting friends and just screaming a Mike Lange catchphrase, when they closed that game out, and remembering his catchphrase before Game 7 of that series, after Game 6 went final, just meet me in the schoolyard for all the marbles. And I think
and he brought the marbles with him at the parade, if you remember.
Right.
Yeah.
I do remember that. And I think there's a couple other things I would say. One, often imitated, never duplicated. You'd hear guys on SportsCenter, everybody that's probably, sports obsessed like you or I were. We were watching SportsCenter any chance we'd get. They'd say things like, "Oh, beat him like a rented goalie." And I think those were usually out of flattery because everybody knew what Mike's line was beat him like a rented mule. And then the one other thing I would stress about Mike Lange was just a guy who could handle TV or radio effortlessly, which is not an easy skill and a transition to make. If anything, he was better on radio. It's an impossible sport to call if you've ever tried to do it. And I think the one thing I would say that, I hope gets mentioned a lot, and I think it will, he was terrific at actually calling the action. You know what I mean? There was a certain ease with which he actually called things on a, up and down the ice basis, not just the big goal calls. And I think that was an incredibly underrated skill of his, but an absolute legend, and just a very, very sad night for Pittsburgh sports fans and sports fans everywhere.
I don't know, a lot of people around here like to turn down the TV and listen to the radio broadcast of the Steelers, but I think they also do that with Mike Lange when he was calling games too, because there wasn't really anyone like him. I know he borrowed this and got the idea of these catchphrases from a broadcaster, I think, that did the Kings, where he was from, out in Sacramento area, and it just stuck here. And like you said, he was more popular than any of the players until maybe Mario Lemieux got here in '84.
It's not a stretch to say, and I think this is kind of wild for somebody now to consider because, I mean, there are obviously many, many, many good broadcasters working locally for many teams, clearly. I think Josh Getzoff is terrific for the Penguins in his role and has been for a while now, and I know Mike helped him along as kind of the next generation, but, like, how many situations could you say, there's a few, but how many situations could you say where, like, a broadcaster helped a team keep a foothold or maintain a foothold? Obviously, Lemieux and then after him, Crosby were the biggest factors in that. But Mike was a guy who made this franchise legitimately more popular than they otherwise would have been had any other random broadcaster been in his place. I think that is a kind of a jaw-dropping testament to how iconic he was in that role.
Yeah, you don't see many broadcasters. Like you said, there's a ton of good ones. You don't see many like him. And like you said before, imitation is maybe the best form of flattery. All right, what is your favorite call? I'd like to know yours. Do you have one? I know a couple of them. I mentioned a couple at the beginning of the show. I also love Carl Arnold Slick from Turtle Creek. There's a bunch of them that I like. And I love to hear the viewers and tell us their favorite call here tonight.
I think this was I don't remember like the calls as well from the earlier 90s, and I was in a cable-deprived family. I'm sure my parents are watching and my dad is rolling his eyes at that right now, but I was a cable-deprived family in the 90s. My dad didn't think we needed cable TV, so I didn't see all those games on old KBL or whatever.
Yeah.
So I cannot speak to whether or not this for sure was a late-coming catchphrase of his or was always there. You know what one I love, though, because it made so little sense, but when he would say it, that was the magic. You were like, yeah, that's a great call. How much fried chicken can you eat? I love that one. It just, Who else? Imagine like a national broadcaster. Imagine Bob Costas doing a hockey game for some reason, and the Penguins score, and he just says, well, how much fried chicken can you eat? You'd be like, what?
Yeah.
But when Mike Lange would say it, it just worked.
Shave my face with a rusty razor. I can tell you what, I know Doc Emmerich pretty well, and I know he loved Mike Lange. Had nothing but great things to say about him, too. And he's one of the best to do it ever in hockey as well. All right, we got to take a break. 412-575-2600. Love to hear from you guys. And your favorite call, Mike Lange, coming up next. Stay right there. All right, welcome back to the Ireland Contracting Nightly Sports Call. This is our GMC Tweet of the Night. This is from your partner over there. From the PM show, Andrew Filipponi tweeted out, our Steelers insider Jeff Hathorn says at 93.7 The Fan, the Steelers are very much interested in signing Browns running back Nick Chubb in free agency, provided the medical on Chubb went well. You were on that call here today. What do you think, Chris?
I mean, for a while, I would have told you Nick Chubb was my favorite non-Steeler to watch in the entire NFL. Like, that's how much I enjoyed watching him run, the vision, the toughness, the finishing ability. But I really do believe his career trajectory, and he's going to be 30 late in next season, so he's not young for the position. I just think his career trajectory was irrevocably altered by Minkah Fitzpatrick's hit. I really do not see the same player. Now, he'll make an argument maybe that after another offseason to get more, physically fit or to just get that knee rehabbed even more, that he is going to be back to the same guy he was. But here's the thing, Richie. I think if Nick Chubb was the same guy that he was and the Browns believed it to be so, they would make sure that he spent his entire career wearing orange and brown. I love the player. I really did. He's an A-plus individual, like a terrific human being. And a really great story of resilience overcoming earlier knee injuries, but I just don't think you'd be signing anything even remotely close to the real Nick Chubb. You'd be signing a shadow of the player.
Yeah, I thought he was the toughest guy to tackle in the NFL when he was healthy before that knee injury. Do you think he's an upgrade to Najee Harris? I do not want to see Najee Harris come back. I know there are reports out there. Jerry Dulac, our Steelers insider, said it could happen. I just don't want it to happen.
No, I'm ready to be done with Najee Harris. I mean, if he came back, you figure it would be for, what, $6-7 million annually at least?
Yeah.
There's a stat, and I know it's because of Saquon Barkley's contract structure this year, but I think you can continue the streak of teams who win the Super Bowl. Their leading rusher accounts for like less than 2% of their salary cap every single time, which is wild. In Barkley's case, it somehow works this year because of the way they structured the deal. But I'm sorry. this whole, where is the entire appeal of Najee Harris? I know Mike Tomlin likes him, fine.
Yeah.
I'm sure Mike Tomlin, who's a tough football guy, respects that Harris himself is a tough football guy, Rich. But even the fact of the matter is he is not an efficient runner at a position that, even though Barkley and Henry have kind of reset how people look at the market, it's still not as highly valued as it used to be. It's an exceptionally deep draft class. And you need somebody that can turn more 20-yard runs into 50-yard runs. I don't even think Najee Harris had a single 50-yard run here in 4 years. So it's nice that he played every game and that he was a workhorse and ultra durable. But come on, let's not overrate the player because we're looking back at the old box scores of the season stats and saying, oh, 4,000-yard seasons. Wow. Really not all it's cracked up to be anymore. I do not want him back.
All right, I know we have a ton of calls about Mike Lange, who passed away earlier today at the age of 76. Buy Sam a drink and get his dog one, too. Here's JD out in North Hills. How you doing, JD?
Hey, guys, I'll tell you what, I've met Mike Lange a few times, and I'll tell you my two favorite calls on Mike, and he will be missed tremendously. Michael, motorcycle, and get in the fast lane, grandma, the bingo games, getting ready to roll.
Yeah, that was a good one. I mentioned that at the beginning of the show. I know we could go on, and we see when you walk up to the press box, which is, I think it's the Mike Lange press box at PPG, you see all his sayings on the wall up there.
I feel like there was a time, Rich, I'll tell this story. Yeah, the sayings are on the wall. I mean, I've obviously seen that too, and it's awesome. There was a time Joe Starkey and I, back when we worked together, Mike actually had an opportunity because of some nebulous, quick lapse in his contract where he was able to come on with us or something. And
yeah.
he came out to actually see us on location. And I remember we were just goofing around after just, basically 2 hours of him relating stories of hockey, and his life in the game. And then we basically tried our hand at coming up with our own versions of catchphrases. Like, here, Mike, because he would, I don't know if you've ever heard this, he would get submitted, hey, I think you should try this as a catchphrase. People would come up to him all the time, apparently, with, hey, well-intentioned, and just say, Mike, try this one. And so I think somebody said, Joe came up with his, and then I think mine was something and he definitely did not use either of these. I think it was I just said somebody wash my socks or whatever like that. Just as much of a nonsense phrase as you could come up with, but he was inundated with those throughout his career. Once that became his thing, people were like, all right, Mike, I got a great idea for one. Here, try this. Just imagine people having that impact where they're like, hey, Mike, you have these great catchphrases. I came up with 20 of them. Hopefully you can use one.
Yeah, I'm sure he used some of them. How about Slap Me Silly, Sydney? Let's go out to Jim out in Pittsburgh. How you doing, Jim?
Hey, guys. Man, 2025, what a lousy year it's been so far. But Mike Lange's story, he actually bought me my first legal drink.
Wow, that's a cool story.
At the Old Decade in Oakland. So years later, I was working for the New Jersey Devils in New Jersey, actually, at the old Meadowlands Arena, and happened to be working up in the broadcast loft. And I told him, I saw him, during intermission, I said, oh, Mike, you bought me my first legal drink. And what was amazing to me was he remembered the band that we both went to see that night, which was awesome. This was 20 years ago on a Sunday night at the Decade, and you remembered the band that was playing. That's what amazed me about the guy.
Yeah, I love hearing stories like this. He was a phenomenal guy, a phenomenal broadcaster. I know he was a big part, of many things that the Penguins did for the last 46 years. He also did when Bob, his what was that, Pompey anniversary, the 40-year anniversary, he was part of that too. He gave a shout out to Bob. We went out to the Penguins and I talked to him about it. We did it together. So, yeah, Mike Lange, a tremendous guy. Let's go out to Lou in Baldwin. How you doing, Lou?
Good evening. In any event, Mike Lange was a great broadcaster. He made the game fun to listen to, and we used to see each other at the blues clubs. He loved the blues, and our question is, did he suffer from alcoholism?
Yeah, I mean, I know we mentioned sayings at the beginning of the show, and there was a couple that I was just trying to look up. He took the heat out of the hot kitchen. You know, he had so many, and I know when I did stories, I did a story on him, and obviously, you know, talked to him. I know that like he used some of those sayings that people sent him, or he tweaked some. But I did look up because I forgot the name of the broadcaster, and it was a guy by the name of Bill King, who called games for San Francisco and Golden State, kind of the area where he's from, and he got the idea of catchphrases from him.
Think about like what a great radio broadcaster has to do, because I want to say my main memories of Mike Lange were as a radio broadcaster, but I do always think of like his call of Lemieux's return goal off the feet from Yager. That was an electrifying night and always will be. His call, that was awesome. But I'm remembering like listening to these games, right, and listening to Mike's calls, and you just jogged a memory from my younger years. When he would say he took the heat out of a hot kitchen, I kid you not, as like a 12, 13-year-old listening to some of these games, you'd go, oh man, thank God they got the puck out of the zone. Like, it was such a relief if they were on the penalty kill to hear him actually say that, which sounds so ridiculous, but you think about like the sort of picture that you're trying to paint with your words if you're doing any radio broadcast, and to hear him say he took the heat out of a hot kitchen, I would go, oh, okay, good. You can relax for 10 seconds here at least.
We got Bill out in El Equipa. How you doing, Bill?
How are you?
Go ahead.
Hello?
Yep, you're on.
The best one I like is the one that he says he beat him like a rat in mule.
Yeah, that was one of my favorites, too. I know Chris mentioned that early in the show. We got to take a break. We'll get a couple more phone calls in after the break. Stay right there.